What's happening? Andy here. I'm joined today by Bob Goldberg, General Counsel for BTA. How are you doing today, Bob?
Oh, Andy, I'm doing fantastic. And it's wonderful to see you. What a perspective. Normally, I'm looking at your back and your rear wheel of your motorcycle as we travel across the country for veterans in the Jillian Fund. So it's much more entertaining to see your face and your smile and everything else. Things are going well.
Excellent to hear. I am much more comfortable than I normally would be when you're staring at my backside. Saw you recently. We were also at the Rico Puttin in the Pink event, the Rico and the High Tech sponsored event down in Atlanta, raising money for breast cancer awareness. Always great to see you. Always great to contribute to a cause like both of those. I wanted to maybe talk to you today. A lot of issues going on. You are, the de facto, I guess, industry. Well, you are the industry attorney, right? So, but beyond that, you are, you've seen a lot in your time. You've worked with dealers on just about everything I could possibly imagine that legally they've needed to work on. You've helped them through issues throughout the ages. You've been doing this as long as I've been covering the industry, and obviously considerably longer. Why don't you, before we even start, talk about your role and why we're even talking, your connection with BTA and what that's all about, and let's make sure everybody understands what that opportunity for resellers is for BTA and that organization.
Well, BTA is just an incredible organization, and their motto is to do for the dealer what they can't do for themselves. And one of those benefits that they offer has been myself for over 40 years. So my phone rings, my email bings, and I get questions all day long. What happens if? Can I do this? I have this happening, so on and so forth, no matter what it is. We work on acquisitions. We work on all kinds of things in the dealer community, and we work with the manufacturers as well. So if a dealer has a problem with a manufacturer, and I don't like to use the word problem, I say an issue or a question, we'll contact the manufacturer and find a business solution to business problems. And I think, BTA has been able to bring the industry closer together, work together, common goals, common ambitions, and I'm pleased to be part of it. I work with BTA, CDA, SDG, Pro Dealer Group, IPVI. You're right. I've been blessed to be able to work with all these organizations and their members, and I've dedicated, my career to the dealer channel.
Well, you're certainly a man of the issues. There were issues early in the year, and still there are issues dealers are having with certain manufacturers. You've been working with them on that. But the one that's not really going away anytime soon, and I think a good one to focus on, we haven't talked about in a little while, is COVID. And where are we with COVID, and how are dealers handling it? And what are you seeing? And specifically, once we cover a little of the 30,000 foot look on what COVID effect is having on us, I want to talk to you about some issues, surrounding vaccinations and maybe what dealers can do or not do with their own teams. So, what are your thoughts on where we are with 18, 24 months into this, coming up on 2 years?
It's just incredible. It's changed the entire industry. There's issues that have arisen. There's questions that dealers never even considered or had to consider. Let's look back a little. Initially, we were determined that we were essential businesses. So when the lockdown came, it wasn't necessary for dealers to close their offices. They supported hospitals, law enforcement, other essential businesses, and they continued on. But they also found that they probably didn't need as many employees as they had. So there were furloughs, and there were people let go, and there were government programs to help with those. And we did webinars to help dealers know what they could do and what they couldn't do and how best to address those situations. Then we had the Paycheck Protection Program, which was just a wonderful thing for the dealer community. I'm not aware of a single dealer who didn't participate in phase 1, and many in phase 2 if they were eligible as well. I'm just as excited that I'm not aware of a single dealer that didn't have their loan forgiven, which was just great. There were a couple that had a couple issues that came up, and we had to address them and clarify some things, but they were eventually all forgiven, which is just great. Now dealers are looking at this employee retention credit. That's another opportunity, another reduction in a credit that dealers can receive for retaining their employees. But there are qualifications, but it shouldn't be overlooked. Dealers should look for that opportunity as well. But the question I get day and night, the issue that comes up is COVID and mandatory policies. Simple as that.
Yes.
And let's look at it. If you think dealers are confused, they have a right to be. There are federal laws, there are state laws, there are city laws, there are county laws, and they're all different. You have states that prohibit mandates. You have states that put in mandates. I'm in Illinois. Any business you go into now in Illinois, you must be masked. So there is a mask mandate. So who enforces what happens? But let's look at it. Traditionally, federal law was the top tier. Federal law came over any of the state laws, county laws, city laws. It was the supreme law of the land. The Supreme Court has found that there's certain state rights, that states have certain opportunities to make laws, and sometimes state laws are more encompassing than federal laws. Well, the feds were slow in this regard in terms of mandates, but we'll talk about this, Andy. The ball game's changed. It's 100% different. We'll look at that shortly. But the feds came out. First thing they did, you have to understand, federal government wants everyone vaccinated, period. End of question. You get vaccinated or, there are going to be penalties in a lot of instances. But Fed said that you have to give paid time off to get vaccinated, a couple hours. And they went a step further. If you had an adverse reaction from the vaccination, you got paid time off for that too. Now, I'm sure there was no employee in the United States who would take advantage of that and all of a sudden had a headache or a stomach ache. But, that's what the law was and that's where it was. And the violation is $14,000 per violation if you don't comply with these federal laws. So it's very important.
Significant.
And when you look at the man, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes.
When I get on a roll, and
no, keep rolling. Keep rolling. I don't want to stop you.
So when you look at these mandatory policies like the vaccinations, there are two exceptions. One exception is medical. Now that one's easy. You have doctor writes a letter and says Bob Goldberg shouldn't be vaccinated because he has mental illness. Whatever it is, the doctor makes a conclusion and you can take the letter and go with that. That's fine. The other one's more difficult, and that is sincerely held religious beliefs. And that word sincerely is subjective. And that one, I think, if a dealer gets in a position where one of his employees says, I have religious objections, we have to determine whether or not they're sincere. Now, if they just went on the internet and joined the church of unvaccination, that may not be as sincere as we need. So they may have to look at that and look outside for that. Religious objections are tough. Now, can you discriminate against your employees or differentiate? Let's do it that way. Can you have a policy for vaccination for those that are on site versus those that are remote? The answer is yes, you can. If there are significantly different variances, you can say that all salespeople have to be vaccinated if they're going to be outside salespeople going into customer sites. You can say with your service technicians, you can say that your admin staff, if you're going to be in the headquarters, you have to be vaccinated. You could say if you have a service technician that works from his home, dispatch from his home, you may not have to have him required to be vaccinated. You can make an exception. So there are things like that. How do you prove vaccination these days? Well, you can attest. I'm a lawyer. I've been vaccinated.
I have a card.
You want to believe?
Do you have a card? I have a card.
I have a card
my wife
too.
was just in New York City last weekend, and every bar, every restaurant, every place that museum, all the places her and her friends went to, they actually had to show those cards to get into them.
Well, so and that's another good point, Andy, because if you're in San Francisco, Los Angeles, or New York City, it is the burden of the establishment to show that the people coming in have been vaccinated. There was that one news story in New York where some people went to a restaurant and the maitre d' or the hostess said, "Can I see your vaccination?" They got into a fist fight over it. You know, they said, "We don't have to be vaccinated. We're from Texas," as it had to be, and we don't have to be back. Well, now you're in New York and that's the requirement. And if the establishment doesn't verify vaccination, they can be held responsible. So you have to look at state laws, federal laws, county laws, et cetera, what's happening and what's going on. Now, when you get to the vaccination stage and you ask people, "Andy, have you been vaccinated?" Now, Andy might say, "Bob, that's personal health information. That's protected by HIPAA. I'm not going to share that with you." Well, in 48 states, that's not going to work. You have a right in this instance, because it's an epidemic, to ask that question. But if you are in California or Texas, you have authorization to have that information. So, Andy, will you authorize me to know what your vaccination is? "No, Bob, that's private." So that could be another problem. Mm-hmm. When we talk about dealers being confused, they have a right to be, because the laws are all over in the regulations. You can give incentives for getting vaccinated. You can give a bonus, give time off, or you can do the stick, like Delta Airlines said. Delta said that if you don't get vaccinated, your monthly health premium goes up $200 a month because you're more at risk than everyone else. So, you know, those are some of the rules. But now the federal rules are coming down. The federal government has said that any employer with 100 or more employees must be vaccinated. Now, OSHA has not come out with the standards yet, and we're waiting for those standards. We don't know how they're going to count employees. Is it going to be at the headquarters? Is it going to be within the state? Is it going to be within the corporation? We don't know any of those things yet. But remember, the government wants everyone to be vaccinated, so I anticipate those things will be extremely broad. The nice part about, if there is a nice part about the 100+ vaccination requirement, is if you're not vaccinated, you can submit yourself to weekly testing. So you get tested every week if you don't want to be vaccinated, and you have to show that you have a negative test. So that is important as well. Now, the one that's coming down immediately, and one we have to be concerned with, and I've been working with Konica on this, and we have an announcement going out, there'll be a webinar on October 14th. This is federal contractors, and federal contractors must be vaccinated. There's no testing alternative. You must be vaccinated. So after October 14th, every new contract issued by the government will have a clause in there that says that you must be vaccinated. So if you don't have vaccinated individuals, you're in breach of contract. It's not a violation of law. It's a breach of contract. Turn it around. I'm going to, sue you for breach or whatever else goes on. So that's a real problem. There is no alternative for testing. After November 14th, any new contract or an extension of a contract or, a new work order on a contract will be subject to the vaccination rule, which says that all employees must be vaccinated in full by December 8th of this year, 2021. It's not too far away. We're in October already.
So is that 100
2 months?
Is that 100 employees or more?
No. That's at any business doing government work. So let's say I'm a industry analyst dealer, and industry analyst has a government contract, and that government contract requires placements throughout the United States. So I'm one of your dealers, and I'm responsible in Chicago, Illinois, for execution and maintenance and support of that installation in Chicago. I have to be fully vaccinated because I'm part of that government contract. Now, the law says it has to be contract over $250,000. So I said, Andy, you're paying me $250 a month. I'm not going through all this for that. It doesn't matter what I'm getting, it's the value of the contract. So we're going to have application throughout the industry for any dealership that basically is doing government service on behalf of a government account by your major supplier or whatever supplier it's going to be. Now, the other part of this that concerns me is that it's not only the service tech going in to service the equipment or the salesperson going out to do it, it's the people that support him as well. So it's the admin people, it's the accounts payable, it's the HR back at headquarters that are part of the solution. So they've made it already broad in terms of this law and this regulation. So it's going to cover virtually your entire organization, even warehouse people that help put the equipment on a truck to get it there, the truck driver, everything else that goes along with that. So by December 8th, they'll have to be vaccinated. We got to get that message out to the dealers that that's a mandate that they should be considering.
So with that, we've got dealers of all sizes and literally in all geographies that will be watching this and of very differing backgrounds and opinions. So my understanding from what you just said is that, if you want to play ball with the federal government, you're going to have to make sure that your staff is vaccinated, right? So that's one. Number two is that next part of that, which is how do you make your staff or incent your staff or, it's, you know how it goes out there. There's a lot of people, we know a lot of people who don't want anything to do with this vaccine. And so where does that leave us? Where does that leave a dealer, a big dealer, a medium size, a small dealer? What are they supposed to do? How can they handle this?
Well, the dealers that support the vaccination, they can mandate that their employees must be vaccinated, or you can do the alternative to weekly testing. And the law as it currently stands states that if someone refuses to get vaccinated, and if that's the policy like United had, they can be terminated. Now, there's legal challenges taking place, but the COVID and the variants spread much faster than the legal system works. So those decisions are going to be, really not relevant when they finally come out. So if you're a dealer, and you can say, Phil Arita at Harvard used to say to us, if I were God, the law would be. Well, if you're the owner of the business, the rule is you must be vaccinated. If you're not, you're going to be terminated. Now, the flip side is the owner says, I don't believe in this. I don't want masks. I don't want vaccinations. Well, you're not going to be able to fulfill government contracts. It's very likely that your customers are going to implement policies that they're only going to let people who are vaccinated into their businesses, and that's legal as well. A customer can say, and major corporations are doing this already, you want to come into our facility, we have a mandate that all our employees are vaccinated. People who come call on us have to be as well. So I think, the cards are against you if you're against vaccinations. They're trying to make it a requirement and just no alternative but to have your people vaccinated. Otherwise, you're probably going to lose some business.
Well, it sounds like it's going to become more challenging after that November and then ultimately the December deadlines that you just mentioned. And we've already seen it being an issue in our industry. Other companies are raising it. I've had conversations with dealers, and that's kind of what led to this. The Canada dinner, the charity dinner that's coming up next month in New Jersey, that a good part of the industry goes to. They announced this year they're going to make it mandatory for vaccinations, right? Which I don't hide it. I'm vaccinated. I believe in it. People can do what they want to do, but I got that shot. I like not worrying about it personally. It just makes me feel a little safer, but it's just going to be interesting, I think, to watch how dealers, particularly in different parts of the country, how they handle this. And you're right. I mean, if you're going to lose business at some point, we've had to do it in this industry before. Sometimes you have to put your personal beliefs, or maybe not necessarily personal beliefs, but maybe your politics, right? Maybe put that aside sometimes and just, do what's better for your business and just take it like that. I mean, I don't know what else they can do other than, to just sort of move down that vaccination path. And certainly you don't want to lose federal contracts. I mean, that's, federal, and I would imagine universities and all the schools and everything that goes along with that, education, and those are big opportunities, and we play hard in that part of the industry, right? Our resellers are very big in those areas, and so you really, I guess if you're a dealer, you have to think this through and plan on how you're going to handle your people, and particularly the ones who, for right or wrong, just don't want to get it. And then what do you do with that? And that's going to be a challenge, I think, going forward. For there's going to be some frank conversations where people are, I think, going to maybe lose some talent over the fact that maybe that talent just isn't going to do it.
Very possible. We're here to answer questions for the dealer community. It's confusing. We're trying to sort it out and make it as simple as possible. But, if you have a concern or not sure which way to go, give us a call at BTA and we're happy to help you.
Bob, this was awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. We'll definitely have to do another one at some point down the road on another topic, especially these COVID topics. They just, they keep changing. And so, there's always new conversations, new topics and new information that you are thankfully providing to everybody. We really appreciate this. This is a very useful conversation, I think, to people who are going to watch this. Any last words, shout outs, anything you'd like to leave us with?
I'd just like to say, Andy, you make it what's happening in the industry, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
I was going to say that. I was going to wrap up with thank you so much for wearing the hat. It is an oldie but a goodie. That was one of the early ones. That was, I think, version 2 or 3. I was a little skinnier on those hats than I am on these hats. But yeah, that's a good one. I got to see if I can even find that. But thank you for wearing that. That made my day. So great seeing you, Bob. I will see you at BTA in a couple weeks.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Andy. Thank you very much.
Take care, Bob. Bye-bye.